All right. Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to make this into a video. This is me reacting to the debate between FD Signifier and PF Jung. I'm going to call PF Jung PF the entire time, and I'm going to call FD Signifier FD. From my limited knowledge of understanding who FD Signifier is, he definitely seems like a very super pro black guy, which nothing wrong with it. And then PF is a freaking right on the line centrist, from my understanding. So let's see where this conversation goes and if it's productive to.
For me, FD, there's a lot of anti-white racism nowadays. And I got to be honest, I was talking to a friend who, I don't know if she was in Ohio or had a friend in Ohio or something like that. But basically someone, I think they were from India or something, said something to the effect of, you know, there's too many white people in Ohio. And I'm like, all right, look. Nobody loves colorblindness more than I do. Nobody loves Coleman Hughes. Nobody loves...
As someone who currently lives in Ohio, that is a funny thing to say. I don't really think like that. There is a lot of white people here. Is there too much? Shit, I don't know. My best friend's white, so I don't. And his wife, who I really like, his wife, and his kids, who I really like, his wife, and his family's white. So I'm not really abiding by the too much white people principle. Well, I've heard this already, so I am skipping this.
That shit piles on.
Does it?
Yeah, I'm telling you it does. On my psyche. I see it and I just go, dude, it's so tiring. Constantly.
So no, this is, well, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but it's
no, but my broader point is, you may not like the reasons for it, but that is part of why I'm sympathetic. I'm more sympathetic to, like, damn, you know, if all of the people who are in the most neglected neighborhoods are all black, you could say, well, it's just poor. It's just poor is the problem, which again, on paper and in practice, I believe is true. Like, black people are disproportionately poor. So programs that are dedicated just to poor people will disproportionately benefit black people. But you can't strip the element of, like, there are people in the inner city in Chicago who have been impoverished since, you know, forever. And to just
Chicago started, well, you know, I can tell you the history as to when forever actually starts.
Sure. Well, there's many different aspects to it. But my broader point is, what do you think of, because this is definitely an emerging trend. I think the Shiloh Hendricks situation, which I know you haven't looked into much, but that was the white lady who called the black child the N-word. I did a video on it. I basically pointed out, this is a very malformed and, you know, disease-ridden psychological reaction to a real phenomenon, which is, like, you know,
this is
at a certain point
as white. Have you?
I have heard of black. I was gonna ask your opinion on this. Black fatigue.
Again, because like I said before we got on, I've avoided online race discourse because, you know, I'm gonna get it back in there eventually.
It's particularly, right? It's a very healthy, normal.
It's not healthy at all. This is mostly just going in circles. Because, you know, because I don't think we're willing to name the thing. And so that's kind of why I want to drill down. Like, my curiosity lies in what does anti-white racism or anti-whiteness feel like from your standpoint? Like, yeah, what does it feel like? What are you afraid of? What is the pain point? Right. And let me say this, and I'm not doing this for the Impression Olympics, because, like, I love the Impression Olympics. I refuse to do
I'm playing it now
on your channel right now, right? But soccer for a local inner city soccer team, believe it or not. So he is his soccer team in general is maybe 5 to 10% black kids, which means he'll be one of 2 to 3 black kids on his team if he's lucky. The other day, a white kid during tryouts did finger guns at him and said, pew, 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 I'm blacker than you. And my son, because he's my son, said, don't talk to me like that. You don't know me, or else. And this thankfully didn't cause
based response,
right? And the reason why he had that response, because I taught him very early on that he's going to encounter that type of, like, activity whenever he enters into a white space, which, as you pointed out earlier, is going to be a lot of his life. A lot of his life, he's going to be entering into white spaces and encountering white people who I don't think this boy, like, this is kind of, we talk about like racism. I've said in other videos that it's not about racism being evil. It's about it being like functional.
So the story he's giving, I'm not using story as a negative term. I'm using story as like explaining an event that happened to him or his family. It's interesting, right? The reason why I find it particularly interesting is because it's relatable too. But I also think there's a fundamental point that he's trying to make that I will let him finish, but I want to chime in how this relates to me, and maybe we can kind of come to a similar conclusion. Because for me, I put it, dad was there, not there for the most part. He was deployed quite often, military. So I was never taught this in terms of how to act against people who are being discriminatory towards you, or who are being weirdly racist towards you. Now, fortunately for me, I never had to deal with like abhorrent racism. I lived in a lot of military housing, so there's a lot of mixed race individuals, and I was able to befriend black people, white people, people of color, and just people in general. So I never really looked at race, but I understood it. I was always a very smart individual growing up, and I had a certain level of confidence to be able to handle any situation I'm in, regardless of how pessimistic or bad that person is in general. So the reason why I brought that up in the context of this conversation is because I do think there's a lot of value in teaching your kid, or at the very least give them, because there are so many different experiences and so many different types of people who are fundamentally getting taught a certain way of being, or getting told how you should or should not be, that will differentiate itself from the way you're being brought up and the way you're being raised. If you hold strong values, and not everybody does, so this won't work for everybody, but if you hold on to strong values, then you should be able to imprint those values very early on to really set your kid up to be able to interact and be able to navigate these situations. So I do think that's a very important lesson that I wanted to pitch into.
So, like, I don't think this little boy was trying to be mean. I don't think he was trying to be racist, as it's often discussed. I think he just does not know how to talk to black people, because where would he learn that under the circumstances? He does not know what will come off offensive, because where would he learn that, right? So,
Fair,
but
fair.
that encounter is an existential threat to my son if I don't, one, address him and let him know how to engage with that, and two, depending on how it goes with this team, address a coach or an organizer and say, hey, there are boys on this team that are microaggressing against my son, making it a hostile environment for him, right? And so, like, some of these terms, hostile environment.
By the way, you want to the word microaggression is a microaggression towards me because it triggers me.
I do hate the term, but you know what I'm talking about. Again,
vaguely, yes, I get your.
I hate the term microaggression as well. But I do think it has a intended purpose, because it can lead to potential negative ramifications if not addressed. And oh my god, I just threw a pick six. I am quitting. So basically, the idea is that, especially if it's being dealt with people who are young, immature, certain things can trigger them, micro aggressions to make them aggressive, and you want to be able to ensure that they don't accidentally do something that is not in the best interest of them and their future. So you'll understand why the term.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of reasons why the terms get cooked.
Sure.
I'm not an identity politics guy. I understand the value of identity politics, but I know the identity politics are very much cooked. So we,
yes,
for not quite aligned reasons, I think agree on this, which is one of the reasons why it's good to talk about it. But I'm asking this because the point I'm trying to get at is other forms of racism carry very explicit away when someone makes an anti-white joke or an anti-white comment in your presence. But I do want to dig into like, what is the emotional and psychological response? What is that rooted in for not just you, but for the what clearly is, at least online, a growing population of white people who do not think they're racist for this black fatigue thing. So, you know,
I mean, it's just I don't know. If someone says there's too many white people in Ohio, it's like, what do you mean too many? Like that's like it's a bad thing.
So were they serious?
Like being white is a bad thing. No, yeah. I mean, again, and to be clear, I'm hearing this secondhand.
Got you.
But yes, he said, or she said that whoever the guy said it was like, unironically, there's too many white people in Ohio.
So
which I'm using that one example, but stuff like that.
No, stuff like that.
You see that all right? Online all the time.
There are no consequences for making jokes about white people. There are no consequences.
Sure.
Okay, this might be where me and FD separate. Although I agree with there being no consequences, that doesn't make it okay. So something being and I don't even know if I necessarily agree of there being no consequences, but I'll let it continue.
Yeah, and I'm not even
except for on Twitch if I say cracker, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I want to do a white racial slur, tier list. Racial slur tier list, by the way.
I think that would be funny. I will not be a part of it, but
that's fine.
Watch it in comment.
I'm gonna clip that you say.
But what, like, why did you have to say the term? See, that I just don't find any value in saying these kind of obviously racial terms, because the term obviously has negative connotations. You're not going to say it in a friendly way, right?
But why do you think that? What do you think drove? Here's where I'm getting at. What do you think drove that Indian woman to say that under the circumstances? Like, what was behind that?
That white people are generally bad, and therefore it'd be better if there was less of them. It's the same thing that causes white people to say black fatigue. It's white fatigue. White people, they're oppressive. They're ignorant. They're dumb. All this different, stuff. It'd be better if there were less of them. You're laughing at my trauma. You're laughing at my racial trauma.
Oh, so I think that's uncharitable, but maybe not inaccurate. I think a more accurate, charitable way.
How would you know it's uncharitable if you don't know the person? That doesn't. I don't know how you can provide charity to someone you don't know. I'm talking. Okay.
Way to frame that is, this is a racial minority in a highly polarized minority space for her that is like reasonably fearful or reasonably tired of how that racial minority status affects her day-to-day life. And thus, maybe
you don't know her. How are you making that conclusion? You don't know the person. You just heard about them just now. That's a very charitable interpretation. Now, to be fair, PF, I don't know how much he knows the person, but at the very least, he secondhand knows the comment and where it came from. So the person that told him could be, or maybe has the ability to qualify the type of person who said it. You have no idea. You have no characteristics to back up this claim.
Maybe in a moment of carelessness or callousness, made a comment reflecting that status.
Okay, hold on. So that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I would point out what you're doing is you are default making the best case scenario for that, which is fair. Could be true. I don't know this person.
Right.
Would you acknowledge that it is just as likely that maybe she's rich, is completely,
I mean, if you both don't know her, then yeah, both your qualifications on the intentionality behind the statement has no value. So honestly, I would just move towards a more applicable anecdote. Honestly,
In all practical senses, certainly weight has a much higher status, all things considered, than like your average poor Ohio white person
Probably.
who's, you know,
Possibly.
and she just doesn't like white people. Like you acknowledge that there's a large number of people like that, minorities, non-whites, who have that attitude.
So,
And it's not rooted in any like, well, it's because they're
well, so
justifiably have white fatigue.
so let's take justifiably out, because
Okay.
I feel like that's
Sure.
loaded, right? And I don't know if I want to get into a justifiable bigotry conversation at all ever.
Sure.
But
Because then we'd have to talk about Italians, and don't get me started on that.
I thought no, you're Irish.
I'm a mutt. I'm Irish.
Yeah,
I'm not Italian. I'm
Yeah,
Irish.
you had
French,
a really good
and
joke
Eastern.
about Italians.
Yeah, that's right.
In the
Yeah,
document you're talking about.
correct.
But so like, yes, I can admit that and recognize that there is a realm where so bigotry. So like any halfway decent race identity politics scholar will often use the somewhat toothless cop out that anybody can be bigoted, right?
Which is true.
how's that toothless? It is 100% true. Anybody can be bigoted.
Which is true. Which is true. Well, it's the reason why that often gets that statement is often taken poorly.
I think I know what he's trying to do because I make the same perception when I look at or when I talk about how MAGA criticizes Donald Trump, right? You use the both sides argument to undermine the situation on your side, right? You expand the circumstance to ensure that the level of blame is not totally embedded into the individual. So sometimes using that kind of everyone totality argument can not really get to the root of what is being discussed. So I can understand why that is problematic, but when we're picking out objective realities, we can allude to what those are, but also speak about individual contexts as well.
Is because it's used to deny the concept of anti-white racism, because racism is inherently structural, whereas bigotry is insert a number of.
And racism is not inherently structural. Racism is a very simple term. Racism, honestly, I guess it really depends on where the definition of racism where did the word come from? Like if we look at it, because I know what he's referring to, define racism. Where did it come from? Honestly, let's should we look this up? I don't know if I want to. But Merriam-Webster is a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, that the racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. It's a prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or belief basis of their membership. So it's not structural. It's not inherently structural. It is very much embedded in a very surface level understanding or surface level perception of diminishing a person purely based off their race.
Of things that people feel and believe about people who are different.
Sure. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, like, if you're asking me if she can be bigoted and that was rooted in bigotry, yes. And I don't approve of bigotry. I don't. You've never heard me make like really lazy cracker jokes in my videos.
I'd laugh if you did, for the record.
They're fun.
But why you just like why you saying the term so nonchalant? You can't have it. I respect PF not taking any offense to it because he inherently thinks all this stuff is worth it, so he's trying to just stay 10 toes in terms of like understanding that some of this kind of identity politics has no value. So that is his foundational principle. So of course he's not going to take offense to this. And I used to be like that, where I was like, I don't take offense to these terms at all, regardless of what you say. but I moved over to a more appropriate stance. And the stance that I now take is that these kind of slurs, these negative connotated words that inherently have a perception of a person based off a racial or a perceived trait, and the term is to diminish that person because of the trait, that term has no value unless you're saying it in a negative connotation. Even saying it in a positive connotation can be something embedded to cultural individual cultural experiences and can be very isolated to a group and how you talk to each other. There are certain ways you talk to different people based off what clique you are in, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, when it comes to a general conversation where there is no kind of similarity or intertwined agreement of cultural resonance, at that point, there's no need to bring up these obviously racially loaded terms. They have no value other than you being edgy or you diminishing the person that you're using the term for. So when FD is saying the word that he's using in the terms of this conversation, PF is not going to take to offense to that word because that whole notion of these kind of identity politics is against his foundational principles. For me, I don't take offense. I don't inherently care, but I feel like it's lazy to use these terms in this context.
Funny. They are funny, right? Racism, that was the joke. I think I made that joke in the video, is that to be white means that racism is always funny. And that's kind of the thing that I.
What? To be white, racism is always funny? What? That's such a crazy statement to make. I don't. Trust me, I make crazy jokes. I'm cool. But I always have to be like, yo, let me chill. Let me not say this joke because not everybody will understand that I'm joking, all that stuff. Sometimes I don't care, but I don't want to feel that I have to provide context for every situation. So this is just
All
right, well, to counter your definition though, it's like I'm articulating my perspective here. I'm semi trying to like also articulate the people who do go down more the like no, well, whites got to stick together now. It's like that is forever a stupid position, but I believe in the way that you dismantle the calls for white unity is this has always been my point, rob them of their valid talking points, right? Like this, and this is why it's partly why I lean into like, of course, anti-white racism is real. And I don't qualify it. And if someone didn't know who I was, they'd be like, oh, is this guy like a white, is he a white supremacist or whatnot? And it's like, no, I'm unabashedly taking the true things that I've seen in my own life, I see everywhere, and robbing it from them, so then I can, in the same breath, just as confidently be like, yeah, and the calls for like white European solidarity, guys. It's like, have you seen the history of Europe? We killed the fuck out of each other. This isn't like the people who say coexistence is impossible or whatever, or like black fatigue. It's like the amount of, real quick, just on this example, the one that shows up always on Twitter is it's fights at the airport. It's like, there's a fight at the airport. Look who it is. It's black people. It's like, this is my go-to example all the time. It's like, I am a Southwest A-list preferred member. Okay, I've gone through the airport dozens and dozens of times, thousands upon thousands of people, thousands of them being black. Not once ever in any circumstance have I seen anything like that. And if I were to base my views off Twitter, be like, oh, you can't go to the airport in Dallas or whatever, right? It's like a
dangerous place.
Yeah, exactly. It's like not even once have I encountered that. And it's just like, and so all these nut jobs, existence or coexistence is impossible. It's like, it's insane. But in order to properly address them and properly rob them of whatever sentiment is pushing people towards their perspective, is to be like, yes, of course, the people who say, yeah, there's too many white people in Ohio, like that's fucking ridiculous. And right. It's just, it's a feelings thing, it's a vibes thing. And like to be told there's too many of people that look like me in Ohio, not that it would be better, like, anywhere else. But it's just like
it's not New York City.
Yeah, but I mean, even that's my point. Even then, it would be bad. But like Ohio, it's even worse.
Comedic. So
Yeah.
So like in many ways, I think your overall framework and logic is reasonable. The thing I think we fight on, the thing that I think people who would judge me for my appearance here would question is the internal mechanism of why anti-right racism is a salient point within those spaces, right? And the challenge becomes, and I don't have a really good, I don't have like, I'm developing my analysis on this beyond just simple, you know, the obvious, beyond simple. I'm trying to develop an analysis
Beyond the simple critical race theory.
Beyond critical race theory analysis, right? Critical race theory analysis, and this is not to undermine the framework of how that is understood.
Yeah.
But I also know that just doesn't have any legs in actually engaging with white people, right?
Okay.
I'll just let it go.
I'm gonna put a pin in that. Well, continue your point.
So
I do want to put a pin in that though.
Because my question would be like to this person in this experience is what about their white, so like could we create a standard where racial minorities in America were held to account for anti-white jokes and anti-white sentiment?
But even that, it's not about holding anyone to account.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about this person; they're irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I would like that sentiment to not be normalized. Now, you could say the only way to do that is by holding people who do it to account, and I don't necessarily think that. I think the only
anti-white jokes or about their white. So like, could we create a standard where racial minorities in America were held to account for anti-white jokes and anti-white sentiment?
But even that,
I'm trying to figure out what. Okay, I just want to understand what he's trying to say. Hold on.
With white people, right?
Okay. I'm gonna put a pin in that. Well, continue your point.
So
I do want to put a pin in that though.
Because my question would be like to this person in this experience is what about their white, so like could we create a standard where racial minorities in America were held to account for anti-white jokes and
I feel like it's as simple as just like I love jokes. All right, I love jokes. I do. I feel like you can make. I feel like you can make racist jokes. You just need to just be able to understand that there are certain terms or things that are being said that has no value to one, the joke, or two, the I take back what I just said. Let me think about that more. I don't want to police people and what they're saying, but I feel like it's okay. It's not. I feel like it's just okay to just say, let's just call out racism.
Now, you could say the only way to do that is by holding people who do it to account, and I don't necessarily think that. I think it's like you can destroy memes. Memes can be destroyed.
I think it's as simple as shame, right? You just don't want to normalize behavior, right? It's kind of similar to the concept of I don't want to normalize the idea of people fucking horses, right? I don't want to normalize people fucking horses, so I shame them. Just like I don't want to normalize white people saying the N-word, shame them. I'm not much into canceling, and he's found it principally against cancel culture. It's not really trying to cancel them and ruin their lives. It's really just making them understand the weight of what they are doing and the precedent it can set for society. Like the precedent of, minorities being able to be racist against white people will eventually turn white people into lunatics who think that a country is systematically racist against white people. That's what could happen as a result. That's the consequence, right? We had that freaking idiot ass woman who went on Piers Morgan and said the country systematically racist against white people, and she's okay with saying the N word and a bunch of stupid shit. So I guess that's shame without cancellation. I feel like is the easiest way to understand it.
Simply by reducing the social value around it. And it's not necessarily through stigmatization, but it's just like, it's like pronoun jokes. Like, what are you going to identify as an attack helicopter? It's like, even though that was very prescient, I would point out 10, 15 years ago, it's like, if someone makes that joke, it's like, it's like, that's the dumbest thing. It's like, it's not like, well, we need to hold people who make those jokes to account. It's just like, it's not interesting.
So I think we agree on this then. It's kind of like, how do we, so there's a reason why, and not kind of, this is where I'm trying to like develop grounded theory with you right now.
Yeah.
There's going back to the example of my son. There's a reason why I've taught my son how to respond to, microaggressions or whatever term we want to use, insensitive racial jokes in his environment. And it's because though in that situation, those jokes are precursors to actual material and existential harm. And in this woman's situation, that's not the case. Now, that doesn't make it okay per se, right? It doesn't make it it doesn't make it an optimal way to engage in racial discourse or trying to figure out and addressing racial problems in America. But the problem I often have with even entertaining anti-white racism is the very premise puts them on the same playing field. And even
the premise doesn't put them in the same playing field. We could just use terms accurately while also understanding that there are terms that can dissect the overall importance of the difference, right? Racism is a term that 100% exists. Systematic racism is also a term that 100% exists. If someone is being racist against someone in a situation, there can be different circumstances where a power dynamic allows certain racism to have more weight than others. Like, for example, if someone was being racist towards a black person in freaking bumfuck nowhere in Kentucky, then that black person is at the power disadvantage. He surrounded by a bunch of yeehaws. You know what I'm saying? Was that racist? I like jokes. So that person's at a disadvantage. There's white people being racist to him. There's obvious not much he could do. He needs to just get out of that situation. And then I bring up the example of someone going to Baltimore and going to a certain type of neighborhood, white person, and then a group of black people go out and just call them a bunch of white slurs. Again, in that scenario, the power dynamic is very clear. Societally, systematically, the white people have more of the influence and power. But in that specific situation, he was obviously being racist against. I mean, that systematic power dynamic means nothing. Because that white person does not have the leverage. He does not have the power in that moment. And that is exactly equal to the situation that we're referring to. Now, in a general basis, being racist to a black person versus a white person is completely different, generally. But it's all circumstantial at the end of the day. So we can understand what the term racism means because it has an inherent definition that is easy to understand and then easy to note and characterize. But we also can know that when it comes to the term systematic racism, then that obviously applies to black people. And that's why every person who has a rational brain in their body, when that one dumbass white blonde dumbass went on Piers Morgan and said white people are being systematically racist against, we can all agree, even the white people who hate all this kind of black fatigue, that's what someone said on this video, even they recognize that's a stupid thing to say because the definition is very clear, right? So I think we can do both, basically.
Like and even like adopting that premise, I've already seeded a ton of really important.
I understand what FD's saying though. Don't deny that.
Like ideological and just interpersonal talking points, let alone realities. Sure. And so not that like that's in and of itself is a problem. I kind of lost where I was going with the follow up there.
Well, because this is exactly, so this is my question is like, because you and I are having this conversation, which is not, like you said, not necessarily, not the norm. I'm certainly the furthest right person you've talked to, which is hilarious, by the way, because you should meet some right.
I talked to Sitch and Adam.
Yeah,
and understand, like I remember, I think I've told this story. I used to be like the type of guy to like argue with white supremacists online all the time. Like once upon a time. So like this is familiar territory.
That's fair. Well, white supremacists are not the best that the whites have to offer. Okay, the whites have plenty great to offer. All right,
no.
Bo Burnham, J-Reg, but that's sad that those were my first two. Not J-Reg. J-Reg that was good, but wait, hold on. But my point is, what is your goal with? I mean, this is just a broad question. Like, what is the goal with for you? Because you're a very significant influencer when it comes to discussing these issues. Because, like you said, you don't want to. If you're going to compare anti-white racism to anti-black racism, let's say, if you even use the same labels, you're putting them on the same playing field, which has its costs. Whether I disagree with them or not, like the costs are there. The question though is looking at it from a more consequentialist perspective of like, what is the practical reality of us discussing it? It's like, do you want white people to become more white conscious or not? Like, would it be good if white people were more like, no, actually like white is right and all that shit? Because I would argue that's not great.
Right.
And part of whether, how do I say this? Whether within the framework that you are operating in, your analysis of anti-white racism not being as real as anti-black racism is logically coherent, correct in different ways. From a pure, like practical, the way that you discuss it, the way that, for example, a white person is going to interact with a far less tolerant white person than me, who's far more sensitive.
Yes.
Because you obviously have to know. There's plenty of people who come across you and just say, "Oh, this guy's a racist. This guy's a racist."
Section. Every time I venture into the moderately right wing,
they're like, "FD's a fucking racist."
I respect the conversation. I obviously already knew that FD is very pro-black, all that stuff, but the fact that he's willing to have this conversation, that has a lot of respect in my heart, at the very least.
Sure, whatever.
FD hates white people.
When the same and clearly vice versa. There'll be people from your further neck of the woods who say the same about me.
Right.
But we're both enlightened centrists.
But actually, no. That's the kind of the thing. I'm not an enlightened centrist. I saw you try to sneak that in.
No.
I am
a true enlightened centrist would deny their enlightened centrism. That's FYI.
Nuanced centrism. That's what I am, and that's the real goal. That's number one.
Inclined to the utility of enlightened centrism for the communist utopia that I one day will see in my lifetime.
Listen, communists have some good ideas. Marx has some good ideas.
Marx has some good ideas. Look at that. We're halfway there. But no, like you said something that hit something I really wanted to speak on, and I lost it for the fucking joke.
I run into that problem often. Practical. Do you want to be right? Do you want to win? There are white people who will hear you and say this guy's racist.
This is a good conversation. Let me see. DEI, systematic racism against white people. I probably will agree so much with FD in this conversation. Are we validating the talking points of the far right? Needs to get back to talking about class instead of race. My sympathy wards towards Christian nationalism. I'm curious about this one. I'm curious about this one.
This is goes to show you how bad of a white identitarian I am. Like, I would dispute that there is no institutional power. It's like all the DEI programs and the corporations that brag about paying non-whites more than whites in order to boost their numbers. That's the definition of systemic racism.
It's also bullshit.
It's not bullshit. It's not bullshit. Microsoft bragged about this in their quarterly reports. I was part of a corporation.
That's not DEI though. You see what I'm saying?
That is okay.
So
Okay, maybe not by your definition, but that is what they call DEI: diversity, equity, inclusion. Quotas are illegal, FD, but goals are not. You can say, I want a goal of hiring 50% non-white, and you can pay people more to do that. I was part of companies. I will not say the name because I was offered to be involved in some lawsuits. And I'm like, I got bigger fish to fry. It's like, that's systemic racism against white people. It just is, by definition.
So in the tech space, let me get this. Let me make sure I'm understanding this. You're saying, and this is my first time.
Not just in the tech space. This is like
what
corporate America.
You're telling me there are corporate American institutions, businesses that paid their black or their non-white. They're non-white men or they're non-white?
Certainly they're non-whites. I don't know if, for example, in the case of Microsoft, they differentiated it by male. They probably did, but they said they pay non-whites 7% more than their white employees if you average their salary out, and then bragged about that as if that's a good thing.
So I'd have to investigate.
That's fine.
I'm with FD. I would have to really look into the claim that is being made here, because one, brag is a loaded term. It can insinuate a certain level of intentionality. Two, it could just be another interpretation could just be simple as they are proud that we are reaching a state where it's not always just white people getting paid more than non-white people. Just acknowledging that we're moving in towards a direction where that's the case is also not a bad thing, right? Especially considering it's been the other way around for so long. So yeah, I would have to look into that too. I'll be honest.
Fine. I've been known to spread misinformation, so don't take what I have to say.
So I would
necessarily, but I am correct.
We have to agree that those are probably extremely rare, considering the grand scope of corporate America. You think that the non-white employees, on average, are getting paid than their white counterparts? Okay. Because we haven't even got one thing you haven't said is for the same job, which I really want to know the details on. But go ahead.
This is indisputable.
This is indisputable.
Now, this is indisputable given what I've seen. Now, again, take it for what it's with a grain of salt.
This is the type of stuff that we need.
But it is indisputable that if you are entering the job market now, and corporate America doesn't mean like rich people. Like, there are many middle class jobs in corporate America. Like, I believe 60% of jobs are from corporations, not small businesses. So like most jobs. Okay, if you are entering the job market, it is absolutely the case that assuming two people with same educational background, same abilities, it is overwhelmingly to your advantage to be a minority of any kind, to be a woman, to be gay, to be black, or whatever. The
overwhelming is an exaggeration, and ultimately, considering the general job market that skews towards people that associate with your demographic, which is white people, they are the majority of the population, and we obviously know throughout history they had the resources, tools, and education to allow themselves to be put in more advantageous positions compared to minorities. then adding a certain type of system to allow the minority population of America to catch up, to acquire the wealth, to acquire the resources, to be able to make up for that gap that exists in American history. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Overwhelming, I'm be honest, there's a exaggeration. I feel like if we look at the statistics, if it was overwhelming, then there would be more minorities over white people in terms of these jobs, and on average. I would have to really see that data to be convinced.
The most disadvantaged thing you can be in the age of DEI is straight white male. Now that is indisputable. What I would entertain as a real argument is,
I'll allow, maybe he will address what I just said, because if he doesn't, then honestly, I feel like FD will be able to combat.
we need to do that to push back against the old boys club type mentality. And I will tell you, again, also having been in these corporations, the old boys club is real. I won't repeat stories.
Okay, so yeah, he basically responded to the thing that I just said. Okay, fine, there we go.
I've heard, but I know people who have been in upper boardrooms who've talked about crazy shit. And you could make the case, okay, maybe we needed some level of kind of forced course correction, but now we're at a point where that's gone, and it's a generational thing.
Here's
for the boomers, maybe. For the Gen Z and the millennials, this is why the Gen Zs, all the kids are so fucking racist. It's like, bro, I'm not in that old boys room. I don't have a job. I don't have a house. I don't have a chance of raising a family. You're holding me accountable for the sins of these old rich white men who are not my allies by any stretch of the imagination. And the whole system's fucked. On top of all the bullshit of just DEI is just dumb as fuck in general.
So there's a couple of things.
Yeah,
like those Gen Z
I talked for a lot. So
consciousness is fucked on a lot of levels. Partially because of what you're speaking to. Partially because of like the failure of DEI, identity politics stuff. So I want to challenge the claim of the most disadvantaged thing you can be is a straight white male, right? So from
getting a job, coming out of college, like your standard college degree corporate job.
If you are holding harmless the structure of the job market and considering, from an individual level, right? As just another white guy with a degree from such and such state university.
White's University,
which is 85% of them, right? Which is kind of a point I'm about to get at. If you're just another 22-year-old white guy from White's University in Kentucky, and you're applying for a job and you're going up against Mary Sue, who is a Filipino child of an immigrant, who is literally one of one, right?
Sure.
Who's literally one of one, like in that application pool, literally one of one.
One of one on one narrow view of identity.
Right, but
I'll FD.
That white person is one of. I'm one of one. Listen, there's no one like PF Young.
From your standpoint, you're also one of one, right? So I get the logic that her one of one under the circumstances from this specific what's the word? Scenario. I get the logic that says that you're at a disadvantage. The challenge is, one, the reality of the results do not speak to that. Every other company in the world, so many of these companies are constantly complaining that they cannot find qualified
correct
candidates. So like you can't be both disadvantaged, but also they cannot find they can't find
enough. Yes,
people that are clearly advantaged over you.
Okay. Right? Can I just give you the specific, because it's dead relevant?
Okay.
I was part of the DEI program design team for the corporation I worked at. They talk about all the time.
Tells you how fucked DEI is.
Yeah. Right. Oh, don't get me started.
But go ahead.
They said we need to increase our non-black or non-white portion of employees. Right.
Right.
Like explicitly, they showed a chart of the county we were incorporated in, and then the racial demographic and said we need to make these two numbers match. That was the extent of the thought that was put into it, which is ridiculous.
Okay.
That's because we were a national corporation. So the county we happen to be incorporated in, whatever. The point was, they're like, okay, how do we do this? Well, we should change our applications to make it gender neutral or whatever, and race, so there are no trigger words in it. Okay, fine. If we're going to hire a black person, we should have a person of color interview them. That's what they
So what?
said. He's a white DEI. Okay, now I brought up, hey, lady, so you're saying if we're going to interview a black person, we need a non-black person to interview them. Doesn't matter if they're black, just as long as they're not white. And I brought up, hey, you might very clearly run into the issue of tokenizing. Hey, we're interviewing a black candidate. Here's our one black manager coming over to interview you.
So, I need to hear the issue. I'm be honest. I have yet to hear a legitimate issue behind these ideas.
It's like, it's ridiculous. But
is it a representative manager to understand the candidate being interviewed? Usually, I mean, it's just creates more relatability in the process. I don't see anything wrong with that.
But that's just one specific thing, which, by the way, that ended up, I found out months later, that exact situation happened where a black manager got pissed off because he was brought in to interview, and it's like, what? I'm just a fucking token. So once again.
Okay, that example existed. So what? A lot of people get pissed off for the dumbest of reasons. So, like, is it a strong regulation or a strong rule or a strong policy? No. I think there are more efficient ways to ensure that minorities get better opportunity. But in terms of being systematically racist against white people because a black manager interviewed a black person, you lost me there. You just did. You just lost me.
P.F. Jung's vibes-based analysis predicted it 6 months ahead. But hold on.
I mean, that's true.
Here's the real issue, though. I brought this up, and no one gave a shit because they don't actually care about making a difference. Hey, guys, is the issue that our hiring practices are racist? I don't believe so. It's just nonsense. I was on a majority-minority team every time I was in that corporation. Mm-hmm. The issue is not we can't find black candidates because we're so racist we turn them off. The issue is that because of systemic racism, which is real, the pool of qualified black candidates to begin with is disproportionately small for the population size that we're trying to go after. So how about instead of doing all these stupid fucking DEI programs where we pay a consultant $50,000 to give a lecture on how to be less racist, let's take...
Okay, I agree with, like, these kind of race lecture bullshit. I agree to that. Okay.
Every dollar of that and give it to community activists who, for example, train underprivileged youth on how to use Microsoft Excel, which is like the most basic corporate tool that every corporation could use. And guess what? Nobody gave a fuck because it wasn't about actually solving the problem. It was about looking like they care. And
I'm there with you. I think FD will also be there with you. However, we don't take away all of it. So here's the issue. The way they're doing it is not a foolproof plan, but it definitely helps, right? It definitely provides stuff for minorities. In your vision, you propose something. They won't do it. So you're just going to take the entire thing away and go back to the status quo. So we got to meet somewhere in the middle. Like, I think maybe FD's going to say that.
DEI shit in corporations is 100% that. And until I hear, this is what, we agree. And so my point, and so until I hear a justification from some DEI consultant for why we should give them $150,000 a year instead of $150,000 to community activists.
No, that's fine. The consultant, I don't give two shits about. but the program also is allowing the opportunity to see more. That's the part I care about. The opportunity for the underprivileged, under-resourced, underrepresented to have the opportunity to succeed just like the majority population that is already in these great situations. That's what I care about. So that's why we got to meet in the middle here, man.
Activists already doing shit to address the fundamental underlying problems. The entire thing is fucking bullshit, and all of the justification.
That's such a stupid conclusion to make. So if the entire thing's bullshit, then we're just saying fuck you, black people, since the solution that we are creating is not as good as it should be. We just get rid of it until we create a solution that matters. In the meantime, all those black people, all those minorities, yeah, who gives a fuck? Until we create the best solution possible. This is the same logic as woke lefties who try to tear down kind of left-wing things, kind of like the Unfuck America tour. They tore down the entire fucking tour that was there to build up and challenge MAGA because it wasn't done the way they wanted to be done. You are doing the same exact thing as those woke lefties. Unless it's a perfect solution, there should be no solution at all. That's stupid. It just is.
Around it, systemic racism, blah, blah, blah. It's like in corporations. Yeah.
So I have without giving.
So stop defending DEI. DEI is not the N word. DEI is bullshit.
I've always I've never been a DEI fan for that very reason because I've seen it like there's I want to.
Yeah, but your philosophical worldview created it. Kimberly Crenshaw created it. Yeah,
Kimberly
she says
Crenshaw
explicitly.
and critical race theory created the framework for what DEI and like inclusion and stuff.
Sure, liberals hijacked it.
There you go.
I think it's fine to modify the solution that currently exists, but we don't have to diminish it altogether because someone's going to benefit from it. Someone is going to get that opportunity. Someone is going to get a job. Someone's going to distribute that wealth to the rest of their family. Someone is going to build a minority population to be in the same exact privileged situation as the majority of the privilege being white people. We're just not thinking bigger picture. We're not thinking bigger picture.
Go.
Yeah, but the underlying creation is entirely a product of postmodernism.
Is valid though. The underlying logic is valid. The problem with all of the critical theory stuff is the liberal hijacking. You should read Elite Capture.
I don't even know if I agree to that. Boom bop, boom bop, boom bop, bam. Damn. It's already almost 2 o'clock in the morning. I am getting tired. I'm getting tired. Could I probably stream while I work? I don't want to. I'm already gonna have to be like editing and shit. I don't want to stream while I work at the same time. So, I feel like I got enough from this. If you want to watch the full thing, feel free to go to PF Chung's channel.